obviously we started the World Series particularly well in Dubai, finishing fourth and getting to a semi-final, which was really pleasing. It was a really good start to the series. A disappointing South African tournament for us, and on the back of two other tournaments, obviously we're very unhappy with the results in Hamilton and also just in our final tournament in Sydney. It's fair to say that probably what's concerning me is our lack of consistency. But then if I'm being a realist, and which I always am, and I look at the results and we might be winning, but we've basically got a new team at the moment. We've been slammed with injuries, and I'm bringing in some new younger players. I think it's really important in Samoa that you create depth, and we look at to build depth. And I looked at it before and I said, what players are we missing from last year? Well, we finished sixth in the World Series, which was an incredible effort. We're missing Belgium, Tuagalus, Yossi Asafalau, Alamanda Matuga, who's continually injured, Malani Matabau, who hasn't played since then, Tila Miloi, who's no longer in the Sevens program. 5 vital players, and we just don't have the depth in Samoa. We just haven't got the depth of players, which is really concerning. But in saying that, there's a lot of potential. With some younger guys, Ioana Sioni, Tuna Tuitama, they're young kids that were coming through. Calvin Marcel, he's since moved to New Zealand. He was a youngster that we were looking to bring through. And the World Series, I think you need to understand, is very, very tough now. There's no easy games. Really tough. And aside from 2 games, which were blown out in results and where we lacked that consistency, and if you look at the last tournament in Hamilton, we were so close to playing for a semi-final. We lost on full time to France. It was 17 all at full time. We got a really bad call from a referee. And we have meetings with the referees, and for some unknown reason we seem to get the calls that don't go our way. We played Argentina, 21 all at full time. Again, another infringement at a crucial time. And the 2 games that we basically could have nearly won. But what concerned me was our slow starts. Starting slowly in the game, and you've got to chase the game, and that's when it's tough. And I've got no excuse for that. The players have to look at it. At training today, I'll talk about mental toughness, and mental toughness is all about attitude. We need to go into the games, like for instance in Hamilton. We played Fiji first up. We played very, very well against Fiji. Probably played well enough to beat Fiji. Then we turned around and had a disappointing game against Argentina, and a 7-hour gap, I think, between those 2 games. So the players switching on and switching off, that concerns me. That's that lack of consistency. We talked about it training today. Every time you play a Canada, a Wales, a Japan, you've got to go out with that same mindset as if you're playing a Fijian team. And that's the difficult, that's where you've got to get up. It's all about mental toughness, and that's really where it's at. We turned around and we beat Kenya with 9 men in the last game in Sydney. We played particularly well. So it's there, and I think a lot of people don't understand the new format, which has actually worked against Samoa. Where, for instance, we've had some incredibly tough draws, tough pools, and you have to win those pools to go through to a semi-final. There's no quarterfinals. Where in the past you've had an opportunity to actually get runner-up. If you look at the first tournament in Dubai, it was the old system. We had Wales and Canada, which we beat, and we had New Zealand. But had it been this new system, we wouldn't have made the semi-finals. So those are the challenges, and unfortunately at the moment we just don't have the depth. How do you create depth? The only way you're going to do that, you've got to bring the young boys through, and you've got to give them game time. And you've got to put them out on the park and give them that experience. Experience builds depth. At the moment, we haven't got that. But I can tell you, there's some huge potential there. Yeah, if you go back to the Oceania tournament, how close we were against Australia to qualify for the Olympics. Up 12-0 at half-time, down to 6 men. We had to play them with 6 men, and unfortunately losing at 19-12 at the death. That was tough to accept. But I know on our day, which is frustrating, that if our guys can get up for it, and play with that consistency, we can qualify. But we're going to Biarritz in France. France have to qualify. Ireland have to qualify. So we have to be right on top of our game to qualify for the Olympics. I'm quite aware of that. But I believe, we have to use the World Series to still bring some of these young players through, to give it their very, very best shot, to be obviously a real chance. Because if you do get hit with injuries in Sevens rugby, if you look at New Zealand, look at the All Black Sevens, they've got 5 Super Rugby players that are in their program because there's an Olympics. They're at the World Series tournaments. Australia's got 3 Super Rugby players. We don't have that depth here in Samoa. But on our day, we can play, and we can play particularly well. I look at our 2 best performances last year. It was our game and how we dispatched Argentina in the semi-final in Los Angeles. I look at the game the following weekend in Canada, where we beat Canada in front of 20,000 Canadians, convincingly. And my frustration is, why can't we produce those performances? But then I said, I go back to the beginning, I have to be a realist. We haven't got the same team as last year. When you lose the Belgian Tuagaloa, Siosi Asafalau, Malani and Alamanda Matuga, they're huge boots to fill because they had the experience factor at playing at the highest level. And that's where it's really tough. But again, I can assure you that these players are going out to give it their all. And it is tough. And I know the expectations there. We're certainly out there to give it our very best. If you saw what the players did at training, how hard they work, it's incredible. I've got a fantastic conditioning trainer pushing these guys particularly hard. We haven't got the size that we'd like. It's brutal now. Physically brutal. You play Argentina, they're huge. You play France, they're huge. You play New Zealand, they're huge. We've got one big player, Tafatu Salir. We've got no height. So we have to combat that. I have to put a game plan in place to find ways to dominate possession, because we are a team that can strike really well when we have the possession. But those early games last week in Hamilton, we lacked possession for the first 2 or 3 minutes in the first half, and that cost us because we're a slow start. All I can assure you, it's like anything. You can never assure a victory or you're going to win a tournament, but you're going to go out and you're going to give it your very, very best with the resources that you have. But I'm still looking for players. I'm going to a Maris tournament this weekend. In New Zealand last weekend, there was a New Zealand club tournament. There's a couple of Samoans that really performed. They're actually coming to the Maris tournament now on my request to try and play their way into the Samoan team. So I'm still looking to find and create depth at the same time bringing through the younger players as well. Sure, you want to reward the players on the island, but if they're not here, then we've got 2 concerns. We want to stay in the World Series first and foremost. And then we've got an Olympic qualifying tournament which we want to win to go to the Olympics. I don't believe you can actually say that, because between now, we've only played 4 tournaments in the World Series. We've got obviously another 6 tournaments in which to play. We'll certainly get a very, very good indication with players coming back from injury. Obviously with other players perhaps added, yes or no, or we persevere with the squad that we have. We'll certainly get a very, very good indication on our performances, and we're going to be up for it in that one. You remember, Sevens is all about one tournament. You look at Fiji, who won Hamilton last year. They came out of there finishing 10th. The number 1 team in the world. Didn't qualify because of the new format. South Africa, exactly the same. You look at Kenya, who actually got to the semi-final of the Hamilton tournament and finished last in the last tournament. Sevens rugby is about performance, but it's also about being consistent. I've been a coach of the All Black Sevens team for a number of years. I know what it takes to win tournaments. If you go into any tournament with a lot of depth on your bench, you're going to have a good tournament. At the moment, we don't have that depth. So what you're relying on is workload with the experienced players that you have, the Tomasi Alosios, the Tafatu Saliers. And you want those younger players to build off the performances of the experienced players. Joe Perez. There are some good players. Lalui Lour. Those are players that have got a number of tournaments under their belt. When experience is everything. New Zealand. Tim Mickelson's played 90 tournaments. Between our whole squad, we'd be lucky to have 90 tournaments. That's our whole squad. We've got players that have 1 tournament, 2 tournaments, 1 tournament, 3 tournaments. Tomasi Alosio, I'm not too sure, it's probably had about 30 tournaments. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what we're up against. We're the least experienced team aside from Ireland and Wales, because Ireland's only just come into the World Series. In the entire World Series in terms of experience and game time at that highest level. I think that's a ridiculous question. I've got a job to do. And it isn't the worst they've been. They've been 13th before. All I can say to the people from Samoa is our team is giving it their very, very best from one of the resources that we have. Yeah, we have to create depth. Sevens is a specialist game in its own right. There's lots of rugby players in Samoa, but you also got to realise there's also a lot of teams in Samoa when you've got your under-20s and you've got your Samoa A and you've got the Manu, and you've also got the sevens team. So the two games, we've got contracted sevens players. At the moment, I think we've got 16 contracted sevens players. At this very moment in time, that's all we've got. And we've got a huge amount of injuries. So we're probably down to about 11 or 12 fully fit players as we speak. So you have to create depth within that sevens, with the sevens program. And that's what we're looking to do. And that's what we've got to bring younger players through. A huge amount of injuries. It's just a brutal sport, physically demanding and physically brutal in the contact. It applies to any form of rugby. It doesn't matter whether it's 15s or 7s. And that's why the games were reduced from 10 minutes to 7, because of the injury and the fatigue factors. These are medical reports they produce through World Rugby. With the new format, and a lot of people don't understand, they haven't actually read into the new format, but in the new format, when you go straight to semi-finals, the maximum amount of games you get is 4. If you don't make the semis, you make 4. And then you're placed in a different pool. So in the past, where you've got quarterfinals, you had an opportunity, if you didn't make the cut, to play for at least 9th or 10th, 11th or 12th. With the new format, you're actually assessed and judged on your points differential. So when you haven't got even pools, we never had a Japan in our pool. We never had a Wales in our pool. We never had any of the easy. We had particularly tough pools, so the games weren't going to be blown out. So therefore, if you never qualified for the cut, you had an opportunity where you're basically put in a situation where you haven't accumulated enough points, and therefore you're playing for a lesser position, whether it be 12th or 13th, 11th or 10th, whatever. And that's the position we found ourselves in. Because when you strike a tough pool, you can't accumulate points or get a blowout. No, it's not on trial. It's a system that World Rugby, I believe, have identified that they should never have. They're promoting women's rugby. To fit the number of games in the tournaments, they had to make sacrifices somewhere. So the men's program, unfortunately, wore the result of that. In other words, they couldn't fit the amount of games in, even though every coach within the World Series protested with the decision that World Rugby made. We had separate meetings, then put a proposal to World Rugby. Said we're quite prepared to play at 8 o'clock in the morning to fit our number of games in, because it's also going to affect the Olympic seedings. And that's what disappointed the coaches, because the Olympic seedings are based over 2 years of performances, inclusive of this year. And that's why they've gone back for the future tournaments from now on in, all gone back to the quarterfinals and semi-finals.
Do you have any answers for that? Why they introduced it? I guess
they introduced it to fit the women's, fit the games and to fit the women's program.
Simple answer.
Every game and structure against whatever team you're playing is totally different. We do lots of work on. Obviously, we work around the analysis of the teams that we're playing. We put together a game plan for that particular team. We then train it, and then obviously then they've got to go out and execute everything based around that game plan. Our game, we're not Fijians, we're Samoans. Our game is built a lot around contact, okay, and more structure than perhaps Fiji, where a lot of theirs is certainly, so they're quite flamboyant. They play a different type of game, very difficult to coach. Our guys have a structure which they buy into. We have a leadership group that also talk about that structure. So there's no issues around that. It's just basically putting a game plan together, going out, executing it, doing the analysis, and then they have to perform. Certainly not. Certainly not. Most of them, nearly all of them, speak pretty fluent English. But at the same time, I always, in case there was a couple of areas that I need my captain to stress to the players, he will then translate that into Samoan. That's every team talk that I have. At half time, if I've got 3 or 4 things to say, he will then translate that exactly at half time in Samoan. So they're quite clear. So there's certainly no communication problems. I mean, this is, if I was to, like in New Zealand last week, they had a New Zealand club tournament, which there were some Samoans in Wellington at that tournament. So there's 2 players from that tournament that are coming over here to try and impress, to play here at Maris this weekend. Okay, so, and then I'm going to the Maris tournament with open eyes to see if there are any other players that I feel are at the level that could also come into our system and be future Samoan players. It's always about self-belief, and we're really positive within the team, and I think that's the culture that you create within the Sevens team. They're very, very close, they work particularly hard, but they're as disappointed as anyone that they've gone out and not performed like they should. The consistency hasn't been there, and that's the area that we're driving, is that consistency. So you attack each game as a final, and that's our mindset. Like, we worked particularly hard this morning. Our session this morning was based on high intensity. The game of sevens at the international level is played at such a high frantic pace, and you've got to make good decisions at crucial times because it's ruthless. When you're playing down a few levels here, like at the club tournament, and you get away with the 50-50s, you don't get punished. In the World Series, you get punished for little mistakes, and that's what the new younger players are learning. And it doesn't happen overnight, I can assure you. And I have a belief in these guys. I believe in the potential of some of the players that we've identified that will come through. Mate, they work particularly. I, more than anyone, want to see them succeed. But sometimes you've got to go across some tough ground before that happens. And yeah, it's a tough time now, but go back to last year. Yeah, we finished 6th in a World Series. We're not the same team from last year. Defections galore. We've got new players that have come in. If we had the same team from last year, then who knows where we'd be. But we haven't got them, and you've got to persevere. And I've always said I'd love to build more depth from the players and the people that are on the island. That's ideal for me. But they're not here at the moment. The lack of resource isn't here to replace those players to play in a high-tempo game, which, as we know, is now an Olympic sport.